Hi, my name is Bob Sternberg. I'm a professor of human development at Cornell University. My field is psychology and education. I'm a past president of the American Psychological Association. And I study in my research human intelligence, but I also have 5 children. So I've had an opportunity to see how it works when they grow up and practice. My theory of intelligence is called the theory of successful intelligence. And basically, successful intelligence is just your ability to figure out what you want to do with your life and to succeed in doing it, given the constraints of the environment in which you live. So successful intelligence is different from IQ in that IQ is a fairly narrow measure that looks primarily at analytical skills and at knowledge, your ability to acquire knowledge and apply that knowledge, whereas successful intelligence isn't just about school success, it's really primarily about, as well, life success. I've had several different ways of focusing in my research. One is on teaching. So what I've been interested in is if students have different patterns of abilities. In the theory, I talk about a successfully intelligent person as someone who's creative in coming up with novel and useful ideas, someone who's analytical in being able to analyze those ideas, and someone who's practical, who has common sense and can make those ideas work in the real world. And so if some kids are more, say, analytical, and some are more creative, and some are more practical, the question I've asked is whether if we teach in ways that better help students to capitalize on or make the most of their strengths, and at the same time to compensate for or correct for weaknesses, will they do better in school? And I think it's an important question to ask because I know in my own case, I got interested in human intelligence because as a child, I did poorly on IQ tests. My teachers thought I was stupid. My parents thought I was stupid. I thought I was stupid. I did stupid work. My teachers were happy I did stupid work, and I was happy they were happy, and everyone was pretty happy. So what can happen if all you do is focus on these sort of narrow IQ-like abilities is you can end up missing out in seeing that there are kids who really can do quite a bit more than their IQ or just academic skills would predict. And what we've found across a variety of subject matter areas like social studies, mathematics, language arts, science, and across grade levels, ranging from about grade 4 through college, is if you take into account in your teaching that kids learn in different ways, that some are more creative, some are more analytical, some are more practical, you can improve student achievement. So it's not that you have to teach each student in a different way, but rather you say, hey, look, I'll teach in all these different ways at different times, so that at least some of the time I reach each student. So if, for example, you're teaching history, you might do something that's just memorizing historical information, but you also might ask a student to analyze an historical event, like what were some of the causes of the start of World War II? Or you might ask the student to be creative and imagine, suppose that Germany and its allies had won World War II, what would the world be like today? Or you might ask them to do something practical, like what are the lessons of World War II for some of the conflicts we're facing in the world today, especially ones that involve genocides? So the idea in any subject matter area is just to vary your teaching style, and it will result in higher achievement by your students. The second thing we do is we try to devise tests that measure these different skills. So when we test, say, in, let's take a different subject matter area, language arts, We might have students analyze a work of literature or, say, compare and contrast two different works of literature. They might, for example, compare the writing styles of Hemingway and Fitzgerald. But we can also ask them to do something creative, like to write a poem or a short story, or a different ending for a book they read, like Tom Sawyer. Or we can ask them to do something practical, like what can you learn from Tom Sawyer in terms of how he persuaded his friends to whitewash the fence for him. So it's important, I think, to teach to these different ways of thinking, and it's also important to test to these different ways of thinking. Because if you don't both teach and test in the same way, what you may end up doing is teaching kids in a variety of ways, but then they learn through narrow testing that it's really only, say, memory that counts. Another thing we're interested in is the idea that kids from different cultural backgrounds or different ethnic group backgrounds may have different patterns of strengths. And indeed, their parents may even have different conceptions of what it means to be smart. For example, in a study we did in California, we found that Caucasian and Asian American parents more emphasized cognitive skills in their conceptions of intelligence, whereas Latino parents more emphasize social skills. But because their teachers' conceptions of intelligence were closer to those of the Caucasian and Asian American parents than they were to the conceptions of the Hispanic or Latino parents, those kids, the Caucasian kids and the Asian kids, did better in school. In other words, if the parents' conception of intelligence matches the teachers, it helps the children do better in school. In another study we found, looking at Eskimo kids, that although they didn't do very well on IQ tests or school-based tests, if it came to things like being able to get from one village to another in the frozen tundra in the winter without any apparent landmarks, or knowledge about hunting or fishing or gathering, these kids really knew a lot. And so what we discovered is that even though on conventional tests they didn't look very smart, and their teachers often didn't think they were very smart, they had a lot of skills that the teachers just didn't see. And when we taught the kids some geometric concepts using fish racks, which are something that's prevalent, that's common in their environment, the children learn better. So an important thing to take into account as well is that if you teach in ways that take into account the differences in backgrounds of the children in your classes, those children often will do better in school. The last thing I want to mention is that we've applied some of these ideas to college admissions. And we asked the question, say that instead of just looking at tests like the SAT or the ACT, we also assessed kids' creative and practical and even wisdom-based abilities. What would happen in the college admissions process? And what we found is that when we took into account creative thinking and practical common sense thinking as well as wisdom, we increased prediction of freshman year academic average. We increased prediction of extracurricular success and success in leadership activities, and we greatly reduced ethnic group differences between children of different ethnic groups. So the conclusion then is it really pays to think of intelligence more broadly, not just as a score on an IQ test or an SAT or an ACT or a GRE, but as really your ability to cope with life and make a success of your life. And when you think in these broader terms and teach more broadly and test more broadly, and remember that children of different cultural and ethnic groups may have been socialized in ways that emphasize different kinds of intelligence, student outcomes will be better. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I hope you found the information useful.